This will sound really strange, but last week I forgot to talk about Moon Knight. I came to recording the video, I was like, what am I doing today? Oh, this. Because there was something else that came to my mind that I wanted to talk about, of course. But yeah, I did mean to talk about that. However, it's worked out in my favour. I was also able to finish Season 2 of Star Trek Picard. Because I also realised that, as much as I do waffle, I think making a worthwhile amount of time on each of them individually would have just been a very short video, and I didn't want to do that. So I'll combine the two. So alphabetically and chronologically, it starts with Moon Knight. Not a character I'm massively familiar with, or was massively familiar with beforehand. I've never read Werewolf by Night, etc., or any of the eponymous pieces. But I was interested in this. I think we all, as children, go through two phases. First one is dinosaurs, and the second one is Egyptology. And anyone who says they didn't have at least one of those is lying. I never delved into it much more than a little bit of an interest as a child, and occasional things that have tickled me, like Assassin's Creed Origins. I enjoyed the explanation of some of the Egyptian stuff there. But this was going to be a very different look at Egypt and its culture and myths and things like that. But like I say, never really explored the comics. Wasn't familiar with Khonshu, Mark Spector, Jake Lockley, or Stephen Grant, or anyone else. I knew because of stuff leading up, like trailers and little, oh, who's the big bad going to be? I knew that the main bad guy in this was only someone who'd been seen once. But it was interesting to me. I love Ethan Hawke. I think everything that I've seen him in, I've enjoyed. Even if the material itself isn't great, there is something he brings to a role, whether that's just a commitment, whether that's just a case of, I know that this may not be the most impressive work ever, but I'm going to give it my all because I'm here, I'm an actor, this is my job. I've taken this job on, and I'm going to fulfill that contract. But there's something about him as a person. I've seen him in interviews, and he's so warm and inviting and very friendly. There's an interview I saw where he'd noticed someone's backdrop, the things they had there, and he was like, hey, I like your collection and things like that. It was very nice. There's a few actors who have been like that I've seen in interviews, and I love it. So yeah, he was a big tick for me, and his performance as Harrow, bringing this malice, but this almost psychopathic malice, because as you may know from a lot of pop culture, psychopaths tend to be very charming individuals. They don't actually empathise, but they can fake it really well. And he did really well in that role. I thought that May Kalamaui, I hope I've said that right, as Layla was great as well. Her accent seemed to float all around. It didn't really settle in a place for me. I don't know if that was just my ears. I don't know if anyone else picked up on that. I've not seen anyone commenting. But it didn't pull me out of it too much. And her final reveal as the Scarlet Scarab, I believe it's called, the original comic thing. They were teasing it throughout with the stuff from her dad and things like that. They've folded two characters together here, apparently. An actual love interest of Moon Knight, but also another hero, the Scarlet Scarab. They're folding them together, and I'm fine with that. Again, no real attachment to the source material. There probably people who love it might be like, oh, you've ruined it, but it worked for this. I think introducing another character who would be that would have been too weighty, and I think removing Layla as this person who knows a version of the main guy we're following would have lessened it as well. So I thought that was fine. I enjoyed that. It was good. Her playing off of Oscar Isaac. Yeah, let's talk about him. He plays, if you want to count the various incarnations as their own thing, technically probably 5 characters you could argue here. Because you have Moon Knight, you have Mr. Knight, which is the suit version because of a misunderstanding, Stephen Grant, Mark Spector, and of course, at the end in that post-credit scene, Jake Lockley. So he's playing arguably 5, although it's really 3 because 2 of those are them in costume. But the way he switches between, you know which character you're dealing with. Every single time that he switches to Mark or switches to Stephen, you know who you're getting. And it's not just because of the accent. I mean, as someone living this side of the pond, there are a few moments where the accent isn't perfect. But like anyone, if you're doing an accent that you're not super familiar with, particularly if it's not something that you've lived with all your life, it's difficult. There are going to be things that you forget about vowel sounds, because just taking a little sidetrack here, accents are vowel sounds for the most part. You can have all the consonants in the right order, but if the vowel sounds are off, the accent loses it. And I will say, apart from a couple of little tiny moments, he nails it. I think it was great. His performance was brilliant. His accenting was brilliant. The differences, like I say, between all the characters that he's played were brilliant. But I love the fact that throughout we were teased with this idea that there is a third. There is something else, because there's blackout scenes. I didn't realise until, I know I like to not watch stuff, but unfortunately I saw something before recording this. And there are moments when he switches, and it's just a seamless little look and a little thing of the eyes, and then he's in the whichever altar he's in. But the blackout moments, the fainting spells that we see, they're clearly when Jake took the fall. And whilst the earlier episodes were like, oh, maybe this is the other side, it's later on when there's a question between the two versions going, was that you? No, was it you? And that's when the seeds were really started to be sown, as well as the sarcophagus in the afterlife / mental home thing. But yeah, so this series was different. It was interesting and new. I also love the fact that technically you can watch it as a standalone piece. There isn't really much, if anything, that cements it in a certain time in the MCU. There's the Global Repatriation Council, or whatever it's called, relocation, whatever thing it is. There's those things on buses, but that's it. There is nothing else that cements it. Definitely we are in this time window. And I love that. I actually said to my partner, who's not big on the MCU, I was like, you could watch it and enjoy it, because it doesn't have all the trappings. You don't need to know everything else that came before. But it also kind of possibly sets up something to come, because Thor Love and Thunder is on the horizon, which features Gore the God Butcher. And here we are dealing with Egyptian gods. We know Zeus is going to appear in Olympus. So maybe this is going to tie into that. We might see, even if it's just a moment, even if it's just a nod, we might see one of the Egyptian gods in there. I hope so, because it'd be nice to actually tie it in fully. It's done well to stand on its own, as its own thing, but I think now bringing it into the fold fully would be great. But yeah, Moon Knight was not something that was familiar to me, and I've enjoyed the ride as someone who is literally being told all of the information on the screen. I felt I could follow it and enjoy it. And it was an interesting look at DID. It's not something that I think people have a massive knowledge of, outside of those who actually have it or have talked about it. So I think it handled that quite well as an outsider. So now on to Star Trek Picard Season 2. And we saw a lot of great people returning, but there was almost the feeling of, well, we want these people to return, but we don't know what we're going to do with them, particularly in Issa Briones. They wanted her back, but they didn't have anything for Sergi to do. So they created this whole thing for Brent Spiner playing yet another Sung to do, and that's fine. Brent Spiner playing a Sung is like a Star Trek free space by now on the bingo card. But yeah, so they literally said, well, we've not got anything else for you to do, so play his genetic modified daughter thing. That's your role. And with what she had to do, she did well. I will say that. It was good to have her back, and I enjoyed having her back. Evan Evagora got the short end of the stick, being killed off, and literally just a couple of cameos towards the end of the season, really. I was not happy with that. Now, there may be scheduling issues or whatever. I don't know behind the scenes. I haven't looked into it. If that's the case, fine. But it did feel like it was just there to give Raffi something to moan about. Raffi and Seven were just on a fetch quest on the sidelines, really, chasing after Jurati. I do want to come to Jurati, though, in a bit. And the whole thing with her getting exactly the same implants towards the end was literally just we don't have to explain it if she comes back in anything else in the future. I don't like that. Have a moment at the start of the next season if you have to, going, oh yeah, remember that time that you got the gut wound? How are the implants doing there? Fine, done. Doesn't have to be in exactly the same place. But things I did love included Patrick Stewart this season. His performances were great. I really enjoyed him and Ola Brady playing off each other when he thought she was Laris, and then the whole thing with Talon. Her death felt a bit empty because it's a case of she's not Laris, and I think the moment of like the emotionality of the scene was meant to be like he's thinking of it like Laris, but he knows he spent enough time now, this isn't Laris. So it brought a tear, but it also brought a, oh, whatever. But his interactions with John Delancey coming back as Q, everything I've said bad about this year, everything that I haven't liked, and there's still a few things that I want to talk about, were not completely removed, but were offset quite heavily at the end when he's sending them all back to the future. When he's giving the speech to him, Mon Capitan, I wanted to give you this last moment. I wanted to have this thing with you. And he hugs him. They share an embrace and a last moment before Q dies, or whatever it is people of the Q continuum do when they don't exist anymore. And like I say, that brought more than a tear. And this season felt almost worth it. This could have literally been an episode. In TNG terms, it probably would have been an episode. Q's dying. Oh well, one last send-off. Da-dum. Done. Maybe a two-parter. It wasn't a 10-episode run. It did not have enough material. But I did want to talk about more ups. I did say I'd come back to Jurati, Alison Pill, doing brilliantly this season, playing off the Borg Queen and then integrating her towards the end. There was the whole, why didn't she just explain it during the first sequence? But from that moment, I was like, this is someone he knows. At first I thought maybe it was Yvette, I think his mum was called, wasn't it? I thought maybe it was her somehow. But then as time went on and the Borg Queen was getting in Jurati's mind, I was like, it's Jurati. It wasn't a surprise reveal at the end. It was, oh yeah, we know now. But like I say, her performances, her singing was great. I enjoyed all of that. And one of the great people of this season was Santiago Cabrera. Unfortunately, very underused again. Very much sidelined with Teresa. But the fact he wanted to spend his life with her and spend that time there and go back, fine. I loved it. It's a shame that we're not going to see him more. I also enjoyed a few of the little guest spots. Of course, Whoopi Goldberg, but also, strangely enough, James Callis as Maurice Picard. This was very weird because about the same time that I was getting through Picard, me and my partner were watching Flash Forward and James Callis appears in there. I was like, wait, that's Baltar again. He's appearing everywhere. And then, once Picard had finished, we started watching The Adventures of Merlin. And of course, he's Lancelot in there. And even without the beard and everything, I was like, that's Rios. I had to explain to my partner and show her pictures. Like, this is how good my brain is. I knew it was this guy. But yeah, he was unfortunately sidelined, but I guess, yeah, it happens. And I think one of the most amazingly well-kept cameo secrets, Will Wheaton as the Traveller, also explaining how the supervisors come in. So we're tying it into the old stuff, but we're also going in a new direction as well. And I love that idea. And he's like, join us to Kore. Now she's got her freedom. She can do whatever she wants. Like, do good for the universe. You've been given this chance at life. Do something great with it. And she, of course, takes him up on the offer. If Will Wheaton said, hey, come with me and save the universe and look after it and make sure everything's, like, ticking along as it should do, I think all of us would go, yes, please. He's not Wesley Crusher anymore. That's clear. He's evolved past that. And I love that callback. Unfortunately, though, this season, I think some of the padding and why it was a 10-episode run are because they were going, hey, do you remember this? Do you remember this? Do you remember this? Like we've seen with all of these reboots and soft reboots and legacy sequels that we're so inundated with. It was just nostalgia, nostalgia, nostalgia. I mean, the cast list for season 3 being a lot of your old favourites from TNG. They're leaning into the nostalgia. And yeah, okay, fine. These people who are watching it now, like myself, are people who've grown up with it. Great, but giving us new stories is just as good and just as important. This is why we're watching, well, Strange New Worlds might not be the best example, because that's literally a what happened before Kirk took control of the Enterprise, really. It's very much a legacy sequel. But Discovery, now that it's moved into the future, isn't in anywhere near the same way. Prodigy is, I guess because it includes Janeway, but it's still its own things. We have lower decks. There are all these things that stand on their own. And Picard should do that too. I don't want next season to just be TNG cast reunion, 10-episode run. But, I don't know. I'm not one of these people who's like Kurtzman and all of his team and everything like that should be sacked from Star Trek. They're ruining Star Trek. No. But I think they're playing the wrong hand. Give us the nod, but don't slap us in the face with it. I know I said that these on their own wouldn't probably make a video, but I think now this video's gone longer than I expected. I didn't know I was quite going to go this in depth on how much I'm bored of legacy sequels and nostalgia baiting, but this is what happens when you don't record to a script, and I'm kind of ill, probably too ill to be recording really, but I needed to get a video done. I didn't get a few ahead of time, that's on me. But thank you very much for letting me ramble about these, and I do quickly want to finish with one little thing. I am here for the casting of Ncuti Gatwa as the 14th Doctor. I haven't watched Jodie Whittaker's run in its entirety, I'm going to have to now, but if you're against it literally because of things like skin colour, then please go away. That's the politest way I can put it. I think he'll do a great job. It's not going to be Eric from Sex Education. I don't want it to be that. It would be too weird, Eric in space. But I'm sure the guy can do really well, and I am here for whatever happens. I'm more excited for a Doctor casting than I've been for a long while, let's put it that way. But yeah, that's all I really want to say, so thank you very much for joining me, and until next time, as always, take care.